Make sure it's going. Good morning. I'm Joe Reingold, interviewing Charlotte Webberman here. Today is June 27th, 2018. Hello there. Hi, Charlotte.
Hello, good morning.
Tell us a little bit about your family, what you remember about your grandparents, your parents, where they lived, etc., and how they got here.
My grandfather came over from White Russia with my grandmother, and I believe my grandmother married when she was 15 because she had my aunt at 16. So they came over in the late 1800s and moved to New York, Schenectady. And I really don't know the reason they came to Fort Worth, but I believe it was that my aunt, Ruth Fine, had married someone from Laurel, Mississippi, and moved to Dallas. And so they relocated here because of that. And then my mother was born in Schenectady, but came when she was 12. And then there was a second daughter, Kate Chessel. And she was a year younger than my Aunt Ruth, but my mother was 16 years younger. Mm. And so my mother always felt like she was a Texan.
She was.
She was. She was a Texan. Went to Pascal High School, but married my father, who was from Brooklyn. And she had gone to New York to visit a relative and met him. And then he came to Texas. So we're Texans.
You came here twice.
We came here twice.
That's great.
Yeah, came back.
And you were born here?
I was born, yes. I was born at Florence Nightingale Hospital. And I married a local Dallas person, Joe Webberman, who was born at, I believe, Parkland. And maybe St. Paul, I really don't know. But married someone local. Had a son that was also born in Baylor, same hospital. Yes. So
Okay.
I'm a native Dallasite.
What neighborhood did you grow up in, and what kind of things did you like to do there?
I was born on Travis Street in the 3200 block between Lee and Oliver. And it was an extremely gentile neighborhood, of course. And we lived in a little house on the side, but it had a little grocery store. And so my grandfather ran a neighborhood grocery store, so I lived in an extended family until my grandmother died when I was 9. And then we moved, it seems like immediately, from Travis Street, closed the the grocery store, and moved to Homer Street off of Fitchie. Mm-hmm. But my neighborhood was all non-Jews.
So what activities did you have as a child?
Well, actually, my grandparents kept kosher. So I grew up in a Jewish family, but I don't remember till I was probably 10 or 11 to actually go to a synagogue to Thereth Israel. But I had very little activities. We were very poor. I don't remember, like the rest of us in the 30s. So, but I remember having a great time. We had a China berry tree, and my grandmother would give me little lids to the jars, and I would fill it with mud pies and decorate it with China berries. And I still like to cook and decorate, so I think that was from childhood. We also, on Travis Street, before we moved, had chickens. So I was in charge of gathering the eggs. And all the chickens had names.
So you couldn't actually eat them. They were your pets.
We didn't eat the chickens, but we did eat the eggs.
Right.
Yeah.
Did your parents have time for any type of involvement in the community or in the Jewish community in those days?
They didn't.
Yeah.
My mother worked in the grocery store. My grandmother kept us, and my father was a pharmacist. So he worked at different drugstores, Ward's and Skillman, Skillers, and Skillets.
Skillers, right.
Skillets.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had his own drugstore on University. But no, my parents really didn't I do believe Mother possibly was a little involved with PTA. I remember her making little bags of candy that I took for some holiday. But
So how long were you in that neighborhood?
I was there till I was 9, till probably 40.
And then what?
No, probably 41. And then we moved to, I went to 3 grade schools. I went to Ben Milam, I went to Sam Houston, and then I finished at Bottom. But I went to, it was, Ben Milam, Sam Houston, and Bottom. And then we moved to Homer. And then I was also there again in a totally Gentile neighborhood. Totally. But although I was raised to Zereth, Israel, my cousin, Herbert Shessel, worked at Temple Emmanuel, and he taught Hebrew school. And he told my mother, you have to send Charlotte and Ted to Hebrew school. So I was confirmed from Temple Emmanuel in David Lefkowitz's last confirmation class.
Oh, that's a famous name.
In 48.
Mm-hmm.
So I did have a religious background as far as that was concerned. Went to Hebrew school, and the Hebrew school came and picked us up and took us to a little house. It seems like it was on, it was off of Mockingbird. Maybe on Hillcrest, or it was on Preston. Preston and maybe, I don't really remember, but close to Mockingbird. And we went to Hebrew school.
Just in a
little house.
In a little house.
A baby house. Little house. I don't know what that was.
Oh.
But
how old were you at that point?
I was, Willie was before, I was probably 11 or 12. My brother went with me.
So did you go to Hebrew school or Sunday school through high school?
No. Once I was confirmed, I didn't do anything. But I joined BBGs. So I was always involved in Jewish activities. Then, when I graduated from high school, went to Texas and joined a Jewish sorority. So then I had Jewish friends.
Which one?
I was in D5.
Oh, I don't think it's there anymore, is it?
No, it went off campus years ago. I don't think they have anything but AE5.
And SDT.
Oh, they still have SDT?
I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So now you're in college.
Yes.
And how did you find yourself involved in college? What kind of things did you like to do?
Oh, I loved college. I love the sorority. I love fraternities. First time I ever dated Jewish boys. I loved it, but I only went 2 years. And so, I wasn't a great student, so I can't tell you I was in wonderful, outstanding academic groups. But I met friends that I'm still friends with today. In fact, she was in my wedding, and she lives in the building in the Bonaventure.
Oh, wow.
Tristan.
So when you were there for 2 years.
I was there 2 years.
And then what did you do?
Let's see. I was there in 51 through 53, and then I worked. I came home and started working. And then I met my husband and got married in 55. So.
What field were you in? What were you working in?
When I was, I was just working in an office. I was just doing office work. But I did have something very traumatic happen. I was working for Universal Gas, and it was before I was married. And so I worked there a year and had gotten a promotion. Well, when I was getting married, and they realized I was marrying someone Jewish, they figured out I was Jewish, And because of that, I was let go.
You have proof. You had proof of that.
Yes. Yes, because I knew the HR person, and I just took it so terrible because I just couldn't understand it. It was just terrible. And she said, Charlotte has nothing to do with you. This is a very strict Baptist company, and we don't hire Jews and we don't hire blacks. Mm-hmm. And she told me that, and she said, I want you to know this because it has nothing to do with you. We just don't do this, and you squeak through the cracks because you talk very Southern, and you have green eyes, and you have brown hair, and we just didn't figure you out. Because my maiden name was Lehman, could have been very German.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. So that was my first traumatic experience.
How did you meet Joe?
Well, I met Joe through a friend that lived across the street on Homer. Her name was Darlene, and she was dating a doctor. And Terry had a friend that was also in medical school who was Jewish. And she said, Terry has a Jewish friend. I want to introduce you, Buddy Leventhal. And so she introduced me to Buddy Leventhal. Mm-hmm. And Buddy was in med school. And I was still in Texas at that time. I hadn't left yet. And so I went out with Buddy, him in med school and me in Texas, for about 3 years. My husband, Joe, had gone to the service and came home. And so Buddy said, do you have any friends you can fix Joe up with? And I said, yes, I have a lot of Jewish friends. So I did. And I fixed him up with several Jewish friends. But then he asked me out. My mother was enormously unhappy, to say the least. And but I started going with Joe, and I ended up meeting Joe through his very best friend, Buddy Leventhal.
It was Beshert.
It must have been, because he lives in the building, and we're still friends.
What did he do for a living?
My husband? Mm-hmm. My husband only went to SMU a year and a half, and he lived on Panama in South Dallas. So he lived in South Dallas, knew numerous Jewish people. And he started with commercial metals and went in the service and came back and started with commercial metals. Okay. He was transferred to Shreveport in 1960. We lived there a year, and he had a customer that he called on in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and Willie Sherman had one son and said, I don't know who to leave my business to. Would you like to come up here and buy into my business? So we went up and looked at Pine Bluff and lived there 28 years in the scrap business. And then my husband actually started his own scrap yard. So he was in the scrap business.
That's a long time in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Believe me.
So what did you do there for fun?
I did everything.
Yeah?
No Jews, again. But there again, my background was, I was very assimilated, totally. So we were very involved in the community, Civic and the temple. The temple, we built a home and lived 1 block from the temple. So that was a temple. And we were there every Friday night. And actually, my husband and I were the first couple to both serve as president of the congregation. Uh-oh. So we were very involved. Painted the temple, president of sisterhood, did all the meals, everything. Very, very involved in the temple there.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
So very involved in the community.
And they were accepting of you?
Totally. Yeah. Never felt a prejudice one time. My children all went to Pine Bluff High School, one high school. Never felt any prejudice. my daughter was in all officers of all social clubs. No, there was no prejudice.
So how many children do you have?
I have 3.
And where are they now?
I have one daughter in Plano and a son in Plano, and I have a son in Austin.
Okay. So you were there a long time.
I
What
was-
brought you back here?
My husband became ill. He had, in 1989, he sold his business. We were going to retire. And he was 58, and we were going to retire and come back to Dallas. And maybe even go to Austin. I have a son in Austin. So we really kind of wanted to go to Austin. But he became ill. He had brain cancer. And so we came back for medical reasons and family support. And he lived 2 years after that. And then I, of course, just remained in Dallas because at that time, even though I had a son in Austin, I had a son here, and my daughter was in California. But it was really best that I stayed here. So,
And you still had friends here
oh,
and a big support system.
oh yeah, oh yes. Oh, I have a brother, and although my sister is deceased, yes, I love Dallas. Dallas, and surprisingly, even though I raised my children in Pine Bluff in an enormously assimilated community, all 3 of them have married someone Jewish.
Oh, that's great.
All very Jewish children.
That's a blessing.
Grandchildren, I don't know if that is interesting to someone, but from Pine Bluff,
Statistics say.
it wouldn't happen. So we were very involved for my assimilated background, still very, very Jewish.
So you lived here many years growing up, then you moved away, and now you're back. I would like to know, how has Dallas changed through the years?
Totally. As I mentioned, well, I went on a bus trip to South Dallas Sunday, and from the Jewish Historical Society, and I knew 2 people out of a busload of, I think, 34. Maybe I knew 3 people. Totally new faces. Of course, a lot of younger people, but when it had 3 congregations, I understand it has 20 Jewish congregations now. So when it had, I understand, I don't even know, a handful of Jewish people, we all knew each other. If we went to temple or Sheriff Israel or Tifereth Israel, we mainly knew each other. Maybe not dated, but we knew each other of the same age. Now, I hardly know anyone.
It's grown tremendously.
So tremendously. And it offers so much. I mean, when I was growing up, one of the only, maybe they had Jewish family service, but my father was president of Hebrew Free Loan, so we were always involved in that, and I do remember that as a child, but I don't remember a lot of other organizations. I don't remember council. I don't remember, possibly Hadassah as a child. I don't really remember that, but my mother was not in sisterhood. She was not a club joiner. She liked bridge.
That's okay.
She did what she wanted to do after she stopped working. But it has just totally changed with just everything in all ages and what they offer.
You told me you had been doing social work. How did you get involved in that?
Okay. When my children were teenagers, I looked around, and I had only gone to the University of Texas 2 years, and I thought, I better prepare myself for something. I think I'll go back to college. which I did.
Oh.
So I picked up 100 hours of undergrad, and I thought, well, by that time I had been so involved in volunteer work. I wanted to be a social worker, so I started social work. And then I liked it so much, I thought, oh, I'll go get my master's, which I did from the University of Texas. Then I went to an agency, area agency on aging, as a social worker, and she wanted me to go to the University of, she wanted me to go back to Texas to do hours in gerontology. So I said, oh, okay. So during the summers, I started picking up hours in gerontology. And then I got a master's in gerontology from the University of Texas. And then when my husband died, it was, and I was young, I was 57, and he died in 1989. It was so devastating. I thought, this is really difficult. I'm going to go back and become a grief therapist and understand what is this terrible thing that happens to people. So I became a certified grief therapist.
Fantastic.
And so, which helped me tremendously because I traveled around the country to get different hours to be certified, and no one entered that program. I would say 90 or 95% had lost someone that attracted them to the field.
Right.
It wasn't just a job.
And you're still doing it now, a
I
little
did-
bit.
Well, I worked for an agency for 20 years. I did caregiving support groups for Parkinson's. So yes,
Wonderful.
that is. I didn't get my master's till I was in my 40s, but I had a true calling. I know when people say you have to have a calling, I had a totally true calling. Oh yes.
It's wonderful.
I
What kind of things are you involved in now?
Well, the year before last, I worked for the homeless. I went down to Austin Street Shelter, and they had started a program for homeless women. So I did a support group for that for a year, and I had 10 women from 9 to 10 and 10 to 11 and loved it. And it was a little difficult. I had to go down Central at 8 o'clock, all the way down through downtown to Austin Street. And that was a little hard. I didn't mind the drive. But they brought someone in to be a co-therapist with me that had no training. She had worked for AT&T and was a volunteer, and they didn't know where to put her. And we were not on the same page in any way. She felt like all you had to do was pray about it. And I think prayer is very significant. But that doesn't keep you from being homeless. And so I was involved with that for 15 or 16 years. Even though I'm not a member of Temple Shalom, I've done biscuits for Stew Pot. And after my daughter entered my grandchildren in the religious school there, I got her, adopted her, and we're still doing that on Sunday mornings. So I do that. I still have, even though I'm not in private practice anymore, I still have a few clients. I have a man that comes here once a month and visits with me for social work. I have somebody that calls me on the phone, and I helped at a church last week in Bible school. I go to a yoga class to a Presbyterian church that's in the neighborhood, and I also go there on Friday mornings. It's called Creative Arts, and we paint or knit or crochet. So I love knitting. So even though I don't have any grandchildren married, I'm knitting. for my great-grandchildren in a hope test. So they, I'll be gone, but they can say
Wow.
their great-grandmother made them blankets.
Beautiful.
So I do that, and they needed someone to come for 5 nights to help with Bible school. So I'm involved with that. With Hadassah, if Susie ever calls, I'll do mailings or whatever. I'll do mailings at Jewish Family Service, baskets, whatever anybody needs.
That's wonderful.
I just freelance. I don't have to have my name on anything. I do what I want to do.
It's great.
Well, at my age,
Yeah,
I certainly have earned it.
What, at this point, I want to ask you, if you can think for a minute, what are you most proud of?
Probably my children and my grandchildren. I had one just graduated from Vanderbilt on full scholarship in special ed,
Oh, good.
following my footsteps, kind of. And then another one is going to UTD on scholarship. One just got his master's from University of Rochester. And I have a granddaughter that graduated from Oberlin. And I think I'm proud of my children and my grandchildren, but I'm also proud of my children. They're wonderful spouses, wonderful parents, generous in the community.
That's great. And you said 2 of them live here in Plano.
Yes, I have a daughter that works for a law firm, and then I have a son that freelances. He was an executive vice president at Brinker and left 7 years ago, and then he just does what he wants to do. And I have a son that's a attorney in Austin.
Good. Is there anything at all that you'd like to add?
Oh, gosh, I'm just so thrilled that I was able to do this. And I want to thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
For doing this. And no, I'm proud of my roots. Very proud of being from Dallas. They say Texans always come back. and probably I'll think of 20 things afterwards.
We can redo it. We can keep going.
But right now, I want to mention something that was so important to me. Talking about earlier when I lived on Travis, and we had chickens. My grandmother, and I like to sew, my grandmother made my dresses out of the chicken feed sacks. And I still.
I thought you were going to say feathers.
No, I wished I had feathers.
That was clever of her.
But she was quite a seamstress, which I'm sure she learned that young, and she was enormously handy. She crocheted, and I knit. And I want to mention that my dresses were made
Fabulous.
out of chicken feed sacks, and I was very proud of them.
That's great. It's where you get your artistic ability from.
Well, you know, looking back, it's amazing what people are proud of, isn't it?
Yeah. And their accomplishments.
Well, yes, yes, my accomplishment, and I should say that I'm enormously, enormously proud of myself. I'm dyslexic, and I aced graduate school and undergrad, and because I worked so diligently.
Fabulous. Wow.
So, and that's why I think you choose social work, or there's some reason you're attracted to it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte, for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.
And